Welcome to our talk about BloodHound CE. If you're not familiar with BloodHound CE, hopefully you're familiar with BloodHound. It's an open source graphing tool that we use for mapping Active Directory and Azure attack paths. BloodHound CE is a new version that we just released on Tuesday. It's bigger, better, faster. It is everything that me 6 years ago wish I had written, but couldn't because I didn't know what I was doing. Yeah, now we have like a real team, and we've tried to make this, something that can stand the test of time. All right, so we'll get started with a quick what is BloodHound? So BloodHound is a attack path analysis tool. This is something that we developed after basically running into this while we were doing red teams and pen testing. I think us and several other companies in the industry independently came up with a very similar methodology, which is you start in a network, you figure out what access you have, you take that access, go somewhere else, and you repeat that over and over and over and over and over again until finally, after like a week of just tedious data mining on computers, you end up where you're trying to go. We were doing some really high-tech stuff before this, like using notepad.exe to store data and Excel pivot tables. So really well-made tools that allowed us to do this very quickly. And by quickly, I mean not quickly at all. But this was our solution. We found out that the solution was graph theory. So we designed a tool that would take all the information we were already collecting, we put it in a graph, and we got what we like to call Google Maps for Active Directory and Azure. All right, so new version of BloodHound CE. There's a lot of really fun stuff. Probably one of my favorite ones is new setup. If you've ever used open source BloodHound, you've had to set up Neo4j. And if you've ever had to set up Neo4j, you've probably cried many, many tears because setting up Neo4j is pure pain. The new version of BloodHound CE is completely containerized. There's no more messing around with versions, no more having to accept the Oracle license agreement after creating an account to download Java. Everything just runs in one command. And drum roll, here is a beautiful command for you. If you want to take a picture, feel free. But this one single command, provided you have Docker Compose, will set up an entire BloodHound installation for you on CE. Yep. Andy's got a video to show you after you have a second to check out the slide here. 3, 2, 1. All right. So Andy's going to show you a demo, which is a start to finish setup, just so you can see how fast it is. It's so easy that that Andy can do it. So that's how you know we did it right. All right. So in this video, Andy ran the command that we just showed you. It's going to spin up a whole bunch of stuff here. Neo4j, Postgres, the web app. It all just gets spun up for you. No more work. After it's all done, you get an initial password. Can you pause that for a second? We as security professionals know that default passwords are bad. So our solution was to generate you a very, very long random one. And you get to use that to log in initially. You go ahead and so default passwords are bad, so are pre-generated ones. So as soon as you log in for the first time, you get to change your password again. So we're making sure that we're not leaving anything that someone's going to use to get in. If you change this to the same password, that's on you.
Well, you can't.
Oh, you can't. Yeah, that's right. We fixed that. Never mind. But here you go. Start to finish. Everything's set up. All it took was one Docker command and logging into WebUI. It lives on localhost 8080. No more Electron container. So it's just better. All right. Now, I'm going to hand this over to Andy so he can show off some of the new features in the GUI. This part's really cool, too.
Hello. Yep, there's a new GUI. Does my voice sound really weird? Okay. I'll just try to enunciate. So there is a new GUI in BloodHound CE. I have the GUI up here, and everything is served by an API. So the GUI is essentially an API client that can also render the data in a helpful way. We're logged out, so let's log back in. Okay, don't look at my password. I trust all of you. Who's ever used BloodHound before? The older version? All of us. Okay, great. So we all know it, love it. So the new GUI, who has seen this new GUI already? Yesterday. Christopher saw it. Everybody else, this is your first time seeing it. Welcome. The new GUI, it runs in the browser, no Electron app, and the UX is going to feel really familiar from the legacy version of the software, where you have a giant graph rendering canvas here. You have search up here in the top left, and we can search for nodes. So let's search for, let's just start typing something and see what happens. So here's a user, and we can click the user, and now the information about this user used to be on the left, now it's on the right. We do this for different design reasons. A couple things to say about the entity panel. One thing that's kind of nice is that the Electron application would hijack your right click. Now, you can right click. Yay! You can right click in 2023. So a lot easier to copy paste information out of the GUI. Similar UX, these are collapsible and expandable accordion items. One significant difference is that used to, you would only be able to see the data that came back here in the graph rendering area. And so if there's a lot of nodes drawn on the screen, this is not a lot, but when there are a lot of nodes drawn on the screen, it can be hard to sift through without having to mouse over each one, like what's this, what's that, what's this, what's that. So the GUI can get really crowded. All of these entity panel items now will show you the list of results from the API query as well. You can click on these rows to focus on that other node that was related from the last search. So that's a nice quality of life improvement. Pathfinding. Pathfinding works very similarly to how legacy BloodHound does pathfinding. So if we want to find an attack path from domain computers to, let's say, domain admins, then we get a path. Very similar to legacy BloodHound. Now you can read step by step what to do. Do y'all ever do assessments where you're looking for attack paths from one domain into another domain, or one forest to another forest? So one thing that's really helpful, this data set doesn't show this very well, but something that's helpful is if you're looking, for example, from domain A to domain B, you might pathfind from domain users in domain A to domain users in domain B. I'm lazy, I don't like typing, and so if I can avoid typing, I will. There is a little switcheroo button right here, and so that'll swap the origin and the destination. So looking for cross-domain, cross-forest attack paths, that button is really handy. Edge filtering. Anybody use the edge filtering feature in Legacy BloodHound? Anybody know about it? Didn't know it existed. So a problem with attack paths can be, there may be an edge that comes back in an attack path. Let's say, for example, execute decom. So who has ever successfully abused this edge by instantiating a COM object remote? Oh, well, yeah, you don't count. We've done everything. On an assessment, it may turn out that this edge is not actually abusable. Or you may have other information that BloodHound doesn't know that means that the edge is not as helpful. So you can filter out different edges by hitting this filter icon. Select the Active Directory platform. Execute decom is going to be under lateral movement, and you can select or deselect these edges individually. You can also select or deselect entire classes of edges as well. So if we deselect, execute decom, and apply, that will rerun the query, and then we see that there's no path found. If there were a path, that did not include execute decom from domain computers to domain admins, then it would display there. Cipher. You can run raw Cipher queries in the BloodHound CE GUI. There are several significant improvements with this. One, multi-line support. Yay! No longer having to cram everything onto one line. Also, the interface that takes this query and executes it against the database to then get data back is way fancier than I can even explain right now. In the future, we're going to be moving off of Neo4j. And we need a way to translate Cipher into Postgres queries, which is 90% likely the database will go with instead of Neo4j. Postgres is actually already running here. So there is a translation layer that will take your Cipher query and then translate that into either Neo4j's Cipher syntax or into Postgres statements. It will also sanitize that query and not allow certain actions. So you can't run any APOC procedures. You can't do any updates to the graph. So you can't write anything into the graph. And also it includes a safety rail for timeouts. So if you run a query and it takes 30 seconds, or it takes longer than 30 seconds to execute, that transaction will be terminated and you'll get a message back that says query took too long. You can also configure that. You can configure all of this because it's open source. So you can rebuild it and change these things if you want to. Saved queries are in this little folder right here. So all your favorite things like find domain admins, map domain trusts, that's all there. In the future, we'll make these easier to modify, to share, to put your own custom queries in there and store them there. So, administration. There are lots of user management capabilities that BloodHound CE now has, because this is actually now a derivative product from our BloodHound Enterprise product. So many of the enterprise feature grades, many of the enterprise grade features that are expected of a SaaS security product are now available in BloodHound CE, including TOTP-based MFA for your user, so you can toggle that on here. User management, so I can grant other people access to my application by creating them a user for my BloodHound instance. And also, roles. So I might give somebody read-only access to my BloodHound instance. I might give them administrator access, normal user access, so I can control what kind of access people have into my BloodHound CE instance. We also let you do SAML configuration if you would like to have a different IDP handle the identities for your BloodHound CE instance. Uploading files is done here. Click that, and then similar UX as before. Drag and drop those files. This happens now asynchronously. So you drag and drop, then that will start uploading the files and then kicking off an ingest process. But then you can close this too, and you can go back into the Explore tab and keep working while it's doing that upload job in the background. Let's move on. New API.
So I think probably since the beginning of BloodHound, this is something that people have wanted. It turns out no one really likes learning how to write Cipher. Probably not even us when you really get down to it. But before this, if you wanted to interact with the database, it had to be through Cipher. I know there's been a lot of community tools like CipherDog, I think like Death Star and a few others integrated with our thing, but it was all through Neo4j, which meant you had to learn the query language. We decided to kind of bring BloodHound a little bit into the future, and we have exposed an entire new API that's available to anyone to use. So anything that you've seen on the web GUI so far has a associated API endpoint that you can query yourself. Querying the API is done using tokens. So if you go back up to the administration page here, not the administration page. And you go to your user here, you can, one of the things you can do now is make and revoke API tokens. I can't use your mouse to save my life. So API tokens, once they're generated, they're going to give you a key and a key ID. Just like most other solutions, once you generate a token, if you don't copy that token out, it's gone forever. So you're not getting it back. So make sure you store it somewhere. But the API token can be used in pretty much any scripting language of your choice to connect directly to our API. The tokens do respect the privileges of the user. So if it's a read-only user, they won't be able to use the API token to do file uploads or anything like that. You want to show off your PowerShell script? Andy generously, and when I say generously, I mean for his own purposes, wrote a PowerShell POC that kind of shows off how this works. So he made this nice little function called invoke BHE request. The token and the token key come in as parameters, and then you just give it what API endpoint you want to hit, the parameters you give it, and it just works. It's great. I can't wait to see what people come up with as far as integrations for this. If you want to pipe some data from BloodHound into your SIM, this is how you do it. So sample query here. This was just a quick request to give anybody that has the name admin in their name. Before, you would have to write some gnarly cipher to do this. You'd have to worry about uppercasing all your stuff and doing it all by hand. Now you just hit a search endpoint and you get everything back. It comes back with anything that would be relevant for our search endpoint. Here's another one, which is I want to know who is local admins on a host. So anybody who's actually had to do this using native Windows tooling knows that it is not fun to do. Actually trying to figure out who's an admin on a remote computer it's non-trivial with default Windows. Now you just go to BloodHound and you give it the computer ID and it tells you here's your admins. And that'll all be unrolled, so you don't have to worry about nested groups or anything like that. So it's just a very convenient way to access all this information. You have another API? That's it. Like we said, anything that was in the UI that you saw, those are all available here. So anything that was on any of the entity panels. Another really cool thing that we kind of glazed over, the entity panels and BloodHound implement in-memory caching now. So any query that takes more than 5 seconds to run gets cached in memory. So the next time you run it, as long as the cache hasn't invalidated, it's instant. So those super, super complicated derivative local admin queries that would take, 10, 15 seconds to run, and then you'd get the number, and then you have to click on the number to get the graph. Now it's just cached. So you click it takes 15 seconds. The next time you click it, it's just right there. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what kind of gets done with the API here. I'm looking forward to seeing cool stuff. Yeah, that's it for our demo. Any questions? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. There's no back button right now. I think it's on our list of features that we want to implement. There are several things that if you're familiar with Legacy BloodHound, they're there. Pretty much anything that's not there right now that was there previously is on a list of features that we're trying to implement. So yeah, it's not gone. It'll be back. Yeah. So things like saved custom queries and things that people have been using for a while, but. We wanted to make sure we had kind of the base out and let people play with it, find bugs, and make things better. Yeah, we don't control the Kali repo. Generally speaking, we recommend if you're going to use BloodHound, you pull it from us. The Kali repo has historically been out of date a few times, which led to some very strange issues. And sometimes the BloodHound GUI just doesn't work on Kali, and we have no idea why. So, yeah. Now it's a web app, so not a problem anymore. But yeah. Any other questions? Oh yeah. So download the collector. Yeah. So historically, one issue that we've always had is, what version of SharpHound or Azure Hound goes with the current data code base. Now on the page in the GUI, you can download your collectors. So that's just up here. You click, go to download collectors, and these will always be compatible with whatever you're running. Any other questions? Yeah. Yep. So this is from Docker Compose that we showed earlier. So if you ran that command, you would get this exact same thing. Oh no, we're definitely accepting pull requests. In fact, I think there's already been a few pull requests that we've accepted since Tuesday. Yeah, so think of CE as kind of like a module that we use in BHE. So stuff in CE is intended to be in both sides, and BHE built on top of it. The question was like code quality for community contribution. Historically, we've always been at least fairly picky with what code goes in. We'll continue to probably still do the same. We'll go back and forth with people and request changes. It's going to be a little bit more vetted than it used to be for obvious reasons. But yeah, we're definitely still accepting community PRs. I mean, this is a product that community has helped us build over time. We're not throwing that away.